stood up in the middle of this theatre and I shouted, I was dead quiet, and I shouted and I said, "Oi, leave him alone!" 14, a youth leader actually saw potential in me and said, "You know what, Dawn, come and get involved. God is as much a part of my life as my fake tan is, but he won't wash off." God has kept me through thick and thin. Sometimes life is a big struggle. You know, when my dad died of brain cancer, I lost my home at one point. God's transformational power when you need him the most is there. When you're really weak, he's strong.
Hello and welcome again to another edition of My Story. And we have Dawnie Reynolds with us today, who's a real woman of vision. I've been longing to have her along. Hi, Dawnie.
Hiya, thank you.
And I've been looking at your website for the charity Ruff and Ruby. So just tell me very briefly, what's Ruff and Ruby all about?
So Ruff and Ruby is an urban youth charity really that raises self-worth and aspirations in young people by giving opportunity, by giving purpose, by helping them to realise that their past doesn't define their future.
Yeah.
And we do that through all sorts of innovative ways, with entrepreneurialism at the heart, you know, employability skills, volunteering, bedroom makeovers, schools workshops, all sorts of things that engage young people.
Fantastic, it really sounds good. And you've just won the King's Award.
We have,
Tell us about that.
I can't believe it.
So exciting.
I know, just really blessed and honoured to have won the King's Award, which is kind of like the MBE for voluntary service for the charity.
So what
it's
do
a
they
kind
call
of,
it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a stamp for life basically from the King, just to validate really what you've done, what you've been doing, your legacy, your history in the city and in the organisation that we work. And obviously we're a charity, registered charity, so to have got that MBE, the volunteers and the staff to have earned that for the charity is amazing.
So we'll come back to a bit of Ruff and Ruby and whatever else you're doing in a minute. But tell us first of all your own backstory. What's your story?
Yeah, well, you know, I was that kind of 14-year-old that had a voice, that wanted to stick up for something. It always was that kid who stuck up for the kid who was kind of left out. Mm-hmm. So I was that kind of young person in school that teachers were like, "Oh no." You know, issues again. And but you know what, at 14, a youth leader on an estate where I lived actually saw potential in me and said, "You know what, Dawn, come and get involved. You're brilliant with your mates. You stick up for us, everything. Come and get involved and help run this youth group on an estate." And that's what I did. And that kind of at 14, you know, that gave me a purpose. It gave me some direction. And I'll be honest, it changed the trajectory of my life because I found my faith at 14.
Yes.
So that was an amazing sort of pivotal point in my life, really, that forever then meant at 18, I left Stoke on Trent and Cheshire where I grew up, and I went to London and worked for a charity in London. I was based in Waterloo with Oasis Trust, but I lived in like Clapham, Ballon, Brixton. Do you want me to tell you how I found my faith?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so a friend of mine said, "Come to see this play at a theatre." And I was like, "Play at a theatre? What about a cinema?" And she was like, No, come see this play at a theatre called The Life Giver. And it was actually in Queen's Theatre in Burslem in Stoke-on-Trent, which weirdly enough is where I live now.
Oh, is it?
Really weirdly, yeah. And I went along to that play, and it was an American company doing the life of Jesus, and it was really real. It was kind of like better than like reality TV we have now. And in this play, it showed the life of Jesus and what he was about and what he was like and how he loved people and what he did. And in this bit of the play, there was the bit where the Roman soldiers are beating him up because obviously, you know, he was going to the cross, they were beating him up, they were telling him what he wasn't and trying to hurt him. And me being that 14-year-old kid I just told you about, where I stick up for everything, I was getting madder and madder at this bit in this play, and it was dead silent. Everyone was watching this play. And I was in the balcony with my friend. And this bit in the play, these guys were beating Jesus up. They were hurting him, they were punching him, they were dissing him, they were putting him down. And I got so angry at seeing them hurt Jesus. Basically, I stood up in the middle of this theatre and I shouted, I was dead quiet, and I shouted and I said, "Oi, leave him alone!" And the funniest thing was, like, the whole theatre went on slow-mo. The whole theatre went,
I'm sure.
Just sort of looked up at me in the balcony, you know. And I always laugh about that because actually people always say, "I became a Christian because Jesus found me," or Jesus wanted to save me, if using that jargon. And I always laugh and say I became a Christian because I wanted to save Jesus, because he was getting hurt, you know. And at the end of that play, there was a guy that stood up and spoke about, you know, this guy Jesus, there's something about him, isn't there? And you know what, you can get to know him, you know, you can get to know him. And if you want to become a Christian, if you want to start on that journey of faith and that narrative of faith, finding out who is he, why is he important to your life, how can you have a connection with him? You know, he lived 2,000 years ago, how is it relevant today? Come and have a chat after. And I did, and that's where I gave my life to the Lord. I said, come into my life, be part of my life, change the things about me that I didn't like, even at 14, the things that I struggled with, help me, God. And he came into my life and changed my life. And you know, now many, many years, and I've still got the same faith. I always say that, you know, God is as much a part of my life as my fake tan is, but he won't wash off. You know, and God has kept me through thick and thin throughout my life, which is absolutely astonishing.
That is amazing. So, yeah, so he's using you as you are a champion for others to actually champion people today and to bring them into a new place.
Yeah, definitely. And because a lot of young people haven't got their purpose, they don't have significant adults who are looking out for them, who believe in them, who see their potential. My passion, because that's what happened to me at 14, was that youth leader saw potential and purpose in me and pulled me onto that right path and said, hey, what about this? And gave me some great choices. For me, as Ruff and Ruby and the other things that I'm involved in our city with young people and in the country, is that we young people need opportunity. They need purpose. They need to find who they are. They need to know that they're actually, their identity is in God. They're a daughter of the King. They're a son of the King. And that's, you know, that combats all the other stuff that the world throws at them and tries to tell them who they are and who they're not. You know, and so for me, Ruff and Ruby and my own personal mission is to help young people to engage with who they are, what they're born for, what their purpose is and what their life's about.
Yes. And I think another thing these days is social media in particular, isn't it?
Yeah.
You didn't have social media when you were growing up, and I certainly didn't.
I didn't, yeah.
So how have you got into understanding that and understanding that problem that so many youth have?
Well, I have a teenage daughter who's 15. You know, social media is massive. You know, we can't live without it nowadays. You know, as much as I'm not from that generation that grew up with it, my daughter is 15.
Yes.
So she sees and feels and knows the influence of social media. You know, a lot of young people I meet talk about being an influencer. And a lot of them want to be an influencer through social media, whether that's for a product or clothing or who they are, what they believe in, their mission, their values. But, you know, every young person, the average screen time, I think the statistic is that every young person spends between 6 and 8 hours a day on their phone. That's massive.
It is massive. It's like a whole day's work.
I know. And that's minimum time. You know, there's a lot of young people who spend a lot more than that. And I think for me, social media is about us me personally, as us as a charity, being in that space and providing a counterculture to that. So one of the passionate things we're about as youth people in Stoke-on-Trent and Ruff and Ruby is actually providing something alternative to the social media, not having social media, but actually putting positive stuff on there.
Yes.
For a positive message, with positive music, for a positive mindset that helps young people, because the negative effects of social media on young people's mental health is enormous. It's documented on the BBC. It's documented very openly in the public arena. Yeah. And so for me as a charity lead and someone who's working in the youth sector, and as a Christian, you know, I want to see us get into that space and change that space and bring something positive to it, you know, where young people who have got a positive faith, who are positive young people who aren't being influenced by eating disorders and aren't suffering from some of those things that come from social media, actually start to rise up as this generation and say, do you know what? It isn't right that young people have eating disorders because on social media they can find forums where it tells you how to starve yourself. It isn't right that young people are told they're not good enough because God says they're always worthy, you're always good enough. Yeah. And those messages that are positive, that are empowering, that are elevating, that are uplifting, those are the messages that we want to get, that I want to get through social media. You know, we're looking to do a phone app so that young people have an alternative to the rubbish that comes up on Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and tells them what they're not. Yes. So, you know, we've got to be proactive. And me as a mum, as a girl, as a woman, as a charity CEO, my passion is that we are in that space, but we transform that space.
So, Donie, you came to the Lord in that amazing way at 14, but did you know Jesus when you were young? Growing up?
So you know what? I was brought up in a generation where your parents or carers went to church. And that was a generation in the 70s. That's what it was like. And my mum and dad went to church.
Yes.
But you know what? They didn't just go to church. They were the kind of people who wanted to make a change in society. So they ran a home for women who were abused, who were exploited. They worked in the community, bringing hope to people. So I was brought up in a home that not only kind of had parents who talked about their faith, but actually demonstrated the love of God in action. And that, to me, I think as a young person, anyone can go to church.
Yes.
But for me, I was brought up in a home where I saw two people who said, you know what, we love God, we've got a connection with God, but actually they did something about it. They showed it to women who were abused and put down and people who needed rescuing. So for me, you know, I always had that, I guess, that legacy instilled in me from my mum and dad. I had they never forced any faith on me. They never forced church on me. They always, as a young person, as a child even, said, it's your choice.
Yes,
and for me, one of the
wonderful.
reasons that I think I've kept my faith since 14 to now is because I was never forced into it. I was always given that free choice to go or to not go, to engage or not engage, to ask God those hard questions, those struggles. Why, God? To have conversation with God about things and not be shut down by people who are like, well, we go to church and this is what you must believe. So I think that's really important for any Christian parents out there. You know what? You might have your own journey and your own path, but always make sure that your child creates their own path, their own journey. That, you know, when they're a small child, you take kids to church with you possibly, but when they get to that teenage years, if you aren't demonstrating your faith as an adult, your kids aren't going to see that in action.
That is so powerful. Yeah.
So, you know, my daughter is full on with her faith, and that's because I've always given her the choice. She's seen me demonstrate God's love in action. That it's real, it's tangible, it works.
Yes.
God can transform your life. God can bring you through struggles. God can help you do things that you think you can't do. And because she's seen that reality, that's why she's got her faith as a teenager. And I guess that's what kept me, you know. Unfortunately, my dad's died of brain cancer now, and I've only got my mum. But we talk often about the history of when I was a teenager and how, you know, their influence on my life, you know, definitely had an impact on me, definitely. But I still had to find my own way.
Yes, we all have to find our own way. Online bullying is another thing I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Because that is such a big issue for children these days. And, you know, as young as sort of 9, 10.
Yeah, that's right.
They all seem to have their phones coming out of school.
They do, and like we just talked about with the average screen time, young people are often even addicted to their phones and they can't put them down. I know a lot of parents who say, oh my gosh, my child, we've tried to take the phone off and the child's gone crazy, you know, but
it is an addiction, isn't it?
It can be an addiction, like anything can be an addiction. And I think the young people, they find something in that phone, those phone stuff that they're looking at. They find sometimes places to belong, forums to belong to, and they're not always positive, but they find places to belong. They find identity, they identify with something, which is why I believe as Christians, especially as a youth worker, we need to be in that digital space, which is what I've said before. And one of the things we're passionate about as Ruff and Ruby is suicide prevention and mental health, and tackling those issues that young people face through online bullying, through grooming that is done online also, and exploiting young people, you know, and helping them to have the power to rise above that, to prevail through that, to overcome those things that can happen. You know, no struggle, no story.
Yeah.
And some of those struggles can be damaging, but we as a charity are really passionate about fighting those influences that are bad and that try to come and rob young people of their life at such a young age. And pornography is the same, you know, porn is 9-year-olds to 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds we work with are accessing porn regularly because it's there, ready, available on the phone.
Yes.
You know, I'm not against phones, you know, phones are amazing when they're used properly.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
there's so many things that we need to be in those spaces to transform them.
Yes.
As much as we need to be living on an estate and loving our next door neighbour to transform their life, we need to be in those spaces on the digital world nowadays to impact that space. It's for good. You know, for good.
So what would you say to parents about screen time and things like that? Can they monitor it?
You know what? There's a lot of forums that talk about parents monitoring what young people are looking at and screen time. Yes, I think we can in a positive way. You know, if you're going to influence your young person, they're not going to rebel because you say, don't do this, don't do that. I think actually educating your young person, your child, about why it's great to be doing something else as well as that screen time. Yes. Hey, you know what? If you're going to use that screen time, why don't we make this video? Why don't we put it on? Actually creating a counterculture and saying, hey, why don't we create this positive message? That's so funny when you did that. Why don't we get that on there and see if that goes viral? And I think often Christians miss out. They can be really negative sometimes about these things. But actually we need to say, right, God, what have we got in our hand? What have you put in the world for us to use for good and for God? And that's how I see things. So, you know, yes, you can check your kid's screen time. Yes, definitely have the right settings on your child's phone for you know, things that are coming through. Of course, that's without saying. And there's lots of safety things you can do nowadays for bullying in online forums. But we all know the reality, featured recently on the TV, about lots of young people who've died and taken their own life through social forums.
Yes, of course.
There are ways that the dark web and people who want to influence people get through. So it's just been about being connected to your young person and being a parent who's accessible, who accepts your young person, who's not judgmental, who'll say, you know what, if you're struggling with this, let's have a look. Let's do this. Why don't we create that instead? And I think, you know, at the end of the day, your young person will make those choices, but it's about being the best parent the best carer that you can be.
Yes.
And so that you're approachable, and that you kind of show your young person, this is faith, and this is kind of the world we live in. How do they work together? Really good. Because isn't that the whole point? Well,
of course,
isn't
it
that the
is.
whole point? So it can be a negative space, but it can also be a positive space.
Yes, of course.
When you live in a city in poverty, if poverty doesn't offer opportunity and purpose and hope, young people will get into criminality. They'll get into all sorts of other things. So I believe as a Christian and as a person, we have to offer a counterculture. Where there isn't jobs, let's offer jobs. Where there isn't food, let's give food. Where there isn't clothes, let's give clothes. And the Bible clearly says that. When you do these things, you do them unto the least. So, for me, it's about creating opportunities and purpose for young people in disadvantage, in poverty. And that's what Ruff and Ruby does. I also do something called Junction Network, and that is a network of churches and church youth leaders who come together, unity in the community. I love saying that. And that's about, we put youth events on called Blaze and other things like social justice, where we engage young people to get involved in something really amazing.
So what does Blaze do?
Blaze is a fantastic youth event.
Yes.
It involves worship, it involves prayer, it involves young people getting together, it involves drawing in young people who would normally be on the fringes of perhaps society and including them and letting them belong on the team, so they get to help put something on that their generation wants. Creative arts, music, rap, spoken word, a bit of chatting, a mocktail bar, non-alcoholic mocktail bar. So Blaze is all about engaging young people to connect with their faith and to find faith in a great way that is accessible for all. Whether you've been brought up in the church or not, you can actually go along and feel you belong. You're accepted for who you are, and you can start that journey of faith and that connection with the Lord, and that's life-changing.
That's amazing.
We have a music project called Sound Advice.
Oh, good, yes.
And we have a music studio where we teach young people music skills, digital skills, videography, photography, but also recording music, writing songs, rap, spoken words. And they've just written a track, actually, the Sound Advice crew have just written a song called Rise Up.
Oh, good.
Come on. Which is amazing. And the start of that song is about being scattered and battered and put down and pushed down and crushed, but actually that we still rise up.
Yes.
And one of the amazing things for me about being a Christian is that, you know what, we get knocked down 7 times, you get back up 8.
Yes.
And for me, for my faith, my walk with God is about, sometimes life is a big struggle. When my dad died of brain cancer, I lost my home at one point. I went through a relationship breakup, and you feel like giving up. But every time God says to you, come on girl, come on lad, rise up. I will give you the strength. I will give you the strength to overcome, to be who you want, you're born to be. And I've experienced that throughout my life, and in reality, and nobody can argue the point on that. Because God's transformational power, when you need him the most, is there. When you're really weak, he's strong.
Yes.
When you feel hopeless, he's your hope. I couldn't live my life without Jesus. I wouldn't be here without Jesus. There was points in my life when I felt like I was going to take my own life, when I've struggled myself with mental health, when I've struggled with things that haven't gone the way I really wanted them to, my life disappointments. I lost a baby before my daughter, and all sorts of things as a woman that you do, you go through. But you know what? Jesus, he bossed the cross for us, and not just for our sin and the stuff we do wrong, to give us a freedom and a hope and a future, but actually to also give us that strength to keep going.
Yes.
That strength when we feel like we're trudging towards a cross. When we feel like it's such a massive struggle to get on in life, God just gives us that supernatural strength. Jesus just comes and gives us that light and life and power to overcome. And that's amazing to me. I wouldn't be anywhere without Jesus.
Yes, it's totally countercultural, isn't it, actually?
Yeah, it is.
Where people want to push you down, the Lord wants to raise you up, and you can go on and on.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And, keeping going and staying alive in this world, a lot within Ruff and Ruby, our suicide prevention programme, a lot of young people and a lot of young adults, and particularly in our city, a lot of males, older males, middle-aged males, take their own life. People feel they haven't got hope.
Yes.
But God, Jesus, is your hope.
Yes.
Jesus has been my hope in the darkest times, and I know that. And that's not just why I'm a Christian. Oh, well, I'm really weak and I need something, a crutch. I don't mean that. But I mean that in the times where in the natural you feel like you can't get through, God brings and does something extraordinary into your life. He brings across a person who shows you love when you feel unloved. He puts you in a place in somewhere, in a shopping centre or a cafe or somewhere, when you meet someone and they just say a word in time.
Yes.
They just say something lovely to you. You think, wow, yeah, I don't need to give up. And so I think not giving up and carrying on and knowing that God's got a plan for your life that is better than what you potentially are living now is awesome. That's amazing.
It really is. And also, we can think about giving a word of hope to other people, can't we? Because we meet so many people along the way who are down in some way. You know, we can meet a stranger and realise that they're not in a good place, and you can just give them a word, even a little compliment or something to start with.
I mean, I was in Starbucks a couple of weeks ago, and the guy in front of me, he put his card on to pay for his latte, and his card wouldn't work. And he was really embarrassed. He went bright red, and there was everyone was in the queue going, you could see him tutting, and I just thought, right, okay, pay for his drink. And it's a tiny thing, you know what? And I just said, I'll pay for your drink. He was like, looked at me like, what? Are you crazy? I was like, well, yeah, but so I just paid for his drink. And he says, well, what can I do? What can I give you the money back? And I said, no, just give me 2 minutes of your time. And we sat down, and I just told him about my life. I told him about Jesus. I told him about how great he was, and that God had a plan for his life, and that God thought that he mattered. It's on my sweatshirt, actually, you matter, that God says that you matter, mate. And he cried his eyes out, and he said, you know what? He said, I can't believe that. He said, yesterday I went to the doctor for some depression tablets because I was going to take my own life this weekend. He said, I can't believe that you've been here today. And I said, well, that's God. Even though you can't see him, even though he's like the wind god, you can feel him in your life. You can't see him in the natural eye, but he's there for you. Yes. And he believes in you, even if you don't believe in him. And this guy just burst into tears, and he said, right. And actually, the following Sunday, he came to my church.
Today.
So I just feel like, God puts you in normal life to represent his love to this world, to this generation, to your community that you are put in, whether you're young or old, wherever you are, you be the best you that you can be in that situation. And if you've got an open heart and you're willing to step out a little bit and be a bit audacious and be a bit tenacious, and maybe speak to a person in a cafe and just say, hey, you all right? Or just smile and say hi down the street, and someone's ready to give up. And that smile, that word in time, that act of kindness brings hope to people's lives, and it gives you the opportunity to then share about your story and who you are and why you've got hope. Yes. Not in a way that is in people's faces and puts them off, but in a way that is just real. Yeah. Human beings want that connection, don't they? We all want that connection. We all want to be loved. We all want that connection. And to me, that's what being a Christian is. Yes. It's showing God's love. It's being full of God's love, and it's having a connection with people. That's all. That's what it is.
Yes. So, Dawnie, do you feel able to share with us one or two of your own personal struggles?
Yeah, I'll share a few. As a teenager, I was really struggled with my self-worth and self-esteem for lots of different reasons. And really through that, I developed eating distress, really. So I always struggled with my relationship with food. So kind of swung between compulsive eating and not eating. And really my whole 20s and as part of my 30s, really struggled with that, and the impact that had on my self-worth, who I was in God, all those kind of things, my own mental health, my struggles with that. So that's been a big thing for me to really overcome and to journey with throughout those years, but I found that God's really helped me over the years. My relationship with God, my faith has really helped me to overcome that, to know who I am in Christ, to know that my identity is in God, that I'm always good enough, I'm always worthy, I'm always accepted, and I just need to be who he's made me to be. Yes. And that's a really strong message that I take into my charity, because the Bible says in Proverbs 31 that a girl's worth is more than rubies or jewels. And that's where the name Ruff and Ruby, actually, Ruby Girl, that's where the name charity for the charity comes from, is Proverbs 31, Ruby Girl. Yeah. And then when we lads joined our charity, we set up Rough Diamonds, because we're all a work in progress. A rough diamond, that's what we are, isn't it? The Bible says we're a work of art, and for me, I'm passionate about all of us in our life, whatever struggles we have, it's about progression, not perfection. Yes. And that's, I believe, what it's about. So for me, eating disorders, my daughter had open heart surgery at birth, that was a struggle. Yes. My dad died of brain cancer. And so, I've had my fair share in life, as you do, of things to overcome. Yes. But God has brought me through. Jesus has brought me through those things, and I think I'm a stronger warrior because of it. I'm a lioness. I'm a stronger warrior because of it, and I impart that resilience and that strength into my daughter. And as a girl of God, and I want to change the world. She's the same as me. She wants to change the world. She wants to change the game. She wants to be the best she can be for God, and as a girl as well.
That's fantastic.
And that's amazing.
Yeah. Tell us one story, if you can, from your Ruff and Ruby charity that is a real triumph.
One of the most beautiful things when you work with young people is to see them really grow and come on. Yeah. And we had a young lady who spoke to us, she came to us actually at 13. She was referred by social services because she was a really explicit self-harmer, mental health really bad, difficult situation going on in her life at home. And she came to us as a volunteer at 13. And we worked with her and we supported her and we gave her opportunity and we talked to her about her purpose, and she got involved with the charity. And actually, madly, 2 years later on now, at the age of 15, she's been working with us and stuck with us for 2 years. She's found her faith. She engages in a local youth group in a church. She's an amazing little worker. She's a grafter. She gets in that charity and she helps other young people who come in who are equally broken, or they've got social anxiety or mental health. She gets alongside them. It's just beautiful to watch. There's nothing else that I want to get up for in the morning than just seeing young people find who they are, be the best version that they can be of themselves, and just live their life to the max. You know, we always talk about Pepsi Max, and that Pepsi Max is like live life to the max by drinking a Pepsi. You know, and we always say, actually, that's mad, because actually God invented that. Because in John 10:10, the Bible says, God says, Jesus says, I'm the life, live life to the max. I can give you life to the full.
Yes.
So actually, God said that way before Pepsi. So I love that. But to see young people living their life to the full, the fullness of life, living life to the max, finding who they are, finding their faith, and finding a future. Yes. You know, sometimes we look at this world and it looks quite desolate. You watch the news and you think, flipping heck. You know, so to see young people realise that they can change the world, that they can be part of that transformation in the world, is absolutely awesome. Sometimes we've had young people and young adults who've come out of addiction and have come and worked with us, and they haven't made it. You know, they've relapsed into their addictions, and they've taken their life, or they've had a relapse and unfortunately passed away, and that's really difficult.
Yes.
Where on the other side you get the story I just told you about. So life is bittersweet, isn't it? And you walk that path as a Christian. You walk that path if you're not a Christian even. But when you walk that path with God, it does give you that extra to get through and to see people rise up.
So, Dawnie, could you pray for us, please?
You know what? If you're a young person out there today, I just want to tell you that you matter. And that's what's on my T-shirt. I wear truth. So don't wear trash. Wear truth. And today I want to tell you that God says that you matter. God says your life matters. God says that you're the apple of his eye, that he sings over your life, that you are worth it, that he gave his own son for you to boss the cross for your life, that you can be who you're born to be, that you can know him, that you can know who you are. So I pray for you today as a young person that you find Jesus, that you ask Jesus into your heart, that Jesus can give you life to the full, that Jesus can be the best influencer in your life and on your life that you can find. So ask him, reach out to him, include him. Ask him just to come and sort your head out. Ask him come to sort your heart out. Ask him to give you his future in your life. And I pray that for you in Jesus' mighty name, that is better than any other influencer in this world. And I want to pray for you parents and carers out there, that you would, that God would give you wisdom, that God would give you the ability to connect with your young person, that God would give you a knowledge of what this world is about and how to bring faith into it, how to model the love of God to your young person. I pray that he'll give you strength when your young person is struggling, that he'll give you places to go, people to talk to get that support. I pray that God will give you boldness, that you wouldn't be in fear about what your young person's struggling with, but he'd help you to be fearless, that he'd give you ways and connections that are divine connections to get that support where you need it. Don't be too proud to ask for help. Don't be too proud to get on your knees and ask God for help. Don't be too proud to come to local charities, organisations that work with young people who can work with your person to engage them and to point them in the right direction. And I pray that in Jesus' amazing name, amen.
Dawnie, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to have you and such an inspiration.